Artists do make the distinction between producer and beat maker. It's very clear that they do. And I can see why a lot of music producers wouldn't want to work with artists today. The artist has now put themselves in the music producer's shoes. They want to be able to tell the engineer what to do on the session, how to do the session, what not to do. There's not a good camaraderie or connection anymore between the music producer and the artist today. You do need those collaborations. You do need those artists that you're working with to help you to realize your production and take it to another level. I've been checking out some of the conversation that's going on online. It's kind of interesting, some of the stuff that's been going on. I want to know from you guys that are out there about, like, for those of you that are producing music, what's your thoughts about working with artists today? I've been watching music production streams and whatnot, and one of the interesting guys that comes up often is PlaqueBoyMax. And I would say PlaqueBoyMax has to be the top music production streamer out there. Like, he has to be. I don't think anyone has a bigger audience or following that does music production. He's definitely bigger than Timbaland. He's definitely bigger than T-Pain. Definitely way bigger of a streamer than like someone like a Sunny Digital or whatever. He's got to be the biggest one that does music production, meaning creating songs, writing songs, hooks, recording, and all that stuff. I've been paying attention to what he's on, and it's very interesting watching him because he often goes and either he'll rent out a place or he'll go to a place and record with some notable artists. You know, the artists kind of see him as an opportunity because he's got a big audience, and they'll work with him because it helps to promote their music and their brand to a bigger audience, ultimately. Maybe a younger audience, maybe a newer audience. So the artists tend to like to work with him. But I've noticed a trend of them disrespecting him as a producer in the end. Like, they'll do all kind of strange stuff, like, you know, because he'll often get an Airbnb or some type of rental place. They always have a big old entourage, and they always want to smoke weed in the Airbnb. And, you know, if you got an Airbnb, you can't be in there smoking weed, man. You know, like, that's a good way to get a fine. And it sounds like he has gotten fines from them smoking in the Airbnb. And, you know, I've noticed how he would try to, like, tell them, no, we can't smoke in here. We can't smoke in here. Like, you got to smoke outside. And they'll look at him like, so what? I forget what you said, basically, and continue doing what they're doing. So I noticed a lot of that going on. And also noticed, like, recently, like this past weekend, he did a session with Lil Baby. And that was a very interesting situation that made me think about how artists today tend to have a sentiment that, number one, the producer, like the person that either made the beat or, you know, helped to orchestrate the music, that person is someone that ruins the vibe for them in the studio. I've noticed that that's a big shift in the dynamic of today's artists. They have this perception like, I don't want the producer in there. He kind of killed the vibe. He don't set the vibe right, or he's not contributing to the vibe that I want to have. And I saw Lil Baby doing that, and he was like, you know, like, man, why are you doing all that moving and stuff? Like, you killing the vibe, man. It's like, and I was like, huh? You like, so you can't move to your own music now? Okay. The other thing that I noticed with the Lil Baby situation was, I guess Lil Baby has his own engineer. I think his name was Jay Ricks or something like that, right? So they were recording in FL, and it appeared that Lil Baby really trusts his engineer more than anybody else. And I can see how frustrating it was for PlaqueBoyMax because I could tell that there was a gap in knowledge between what PlaqueBoyMax could do in FL versus what Lil Baby's engineer could do. So I often saw PlaqueBoyMax like, yo, you could just do it like this, or oh, just do it like that. And I was watching how they were recording, and it was just like Lil Baby's engineer is getting rid of the wrong stuff, and he's the way he's punching things in. I was like, man, you kind of losing information. You losing some of the stuff, and I saw a tendency for Lil Baby to kind of like blame certain things on PlaqueBoyMax, like, oh, because Lil Baby uses a lot of auto tune, and he expects his engineer to get the auto tune sounding the way it needs to sound, so that you get that Lil Baby sound with the auto tuning key and making it sound the way it sounds when he's on other records. But I noticed he kept blaming PlaqueBoyMax for the lack of correctness in the auto tune sound, and it was a situation where PlaqueBoyMax wasn't even manning the engineering at that time. It was his own engineer that was doing that stuff, but PlaqueBoyMax was somehow getting the blame because he was in the studio. So he became an easy scapegoat for Lil Baby when it wasn't sounding the way he thought it should sound at that moment. So I noticed that there was just this like sentiment of like disrespect and disregard for the producer in this era. And I can see why a lot of music producers wouldn't want to work with artists today, because it's just the lack of respect and the lack of trust that these artists today have for the music producer could easily make it where you wouldn't want to have them in the studio with you, because they're not really collaborating with you. They just want the beat and they want their engineer to do what they say. So the artist has now put themselves in the music producer's shoes, essentially, and they want to be able to tell the engineer what to do on the session, how to do the session, what not to do. There's no producer anymore for a lot of these artists. They don't want to work with a producer. They want to basically be the producer and have the engineer kind of be somewhat of their, errand boy or their runner or whatever they need at that time. The engineer has to make it happen. No guidance though, like no guidance from the engineer for sure. And definitely don't put a producer in there at this point. When I hear producers in the community talking about like working on music now, I really understand why a lot of folks is just like, hey, I'm gonna just work on music by myself today, right? Because that's what the vibe is, and there's not a good camaraderie or connection anymore between the music producer and the artist today, because the artist feels like they can do essentially what the music producer should be doing, which is instructing the direction of the song and helping the engineer and other personnel to realize what the song should be and how it should sound. Ultimately, you still, as a producer, you got to figure out how to negotiate with artists. If you really want to work and collaborate, you cannot just say, I'm not going to work with nobody. I'm going to just be in my room by myself, because unless you're willing to go out as an artist yourself, then you do need those collaborations. You do need those artists that you're working with to help you to realize your production and take it to another level. But you got to find artists that respect what you do. And I think that takes some time. It takes some trust as well. You have to gain trust, and you have to figure out what you need to do to gain the trust, because I think that's the real reason that a lot of artists don't respect or want to work with a producer, because they don't trust them. They only want their resources, meaning they want the beat, they want the tracks that you have, but they don't trust that you know how to complete a song. They don't trust that you know how to properly get a song to sound good. Like, yes, you know how to get your beat to sound good, but it's a difference between getting your beat to sound good and getting this whole song recorded and engineered the way I would like to hear it for a final production. You definitely got to figure out how to establish that trust as a producer. Otherwise, yeah, you'll be in a situation where these artists just do whatever they want, and they'll kind of little homie you, like, yeah, okay, little homie, I got your beat. Go run around. Go run along now, please. Go do something else. Go make some more beats. Making beats now doesn't establish trust. Having beats doesn't establish trust. You have to do other things to establish trust. And I think part of it is just if you have motion with songs that you've actually produced and you have a lot of them, then it creates a little bit more trust for an artist. Like, hey, this person is already charting. They're already winning awards with their own productions with artists and the music that they're putting out on their own. So when they come to you now, that establishes a bit more trust and respect in the situation. But if you don't have that, then there's a long road to getting that trust. And I think part of it may be that you do have to do some things where you show that artist that you know what you're talking about. And it makes it even more difficult when the artist has an engineer that they believe is an oracle and knows everything, because that engineer becomes kind of like a co-producer in a lot of ways. So then you as a composer, beat maker, producer coming into that situation now have a secondary hurdle of getting past the engineer and what they say or what they know how to do. Because then you have to kind of prove yourself worthy of having an opinion above or beyond what their engineer is giving to them as an artist. I think you do ultimately need to figure out what establishes trust. I think that's the ultimate answer, is like, how do you have to figure out how to establish trust over a period of time so that the artist begins to respect what you are saying and what you're suggesting. Unless they have hired you to do that in a session, most of the time they've hired you to make a beat and walk away from the situation. But I think you can start to contribute more over time, especially if you are willing to offer to do certain things without payment. They don't know of you as a producer if they've only heard your beats. And I think that's where that differentiation between beat maker and producer really becomes apparent. If they've discovered you based upon your beats, they don't know you as a producer. They know you as a beat maker. So artists do make the distinction between producer and beat maker. It's very clear that they do. They may not articulate that because they kind of view themselves as producer today, even though they don't call themselves a producer. The same actions and the same instruction that they're providing in the studio today is the same thing that a producer would have done 20, 30 years ago. So they themselves have acquired that skill set because they know how they want their song to sound. And they know that it's as simple as me just telling the engineer what to do. Now, they don't necessarily know how to exactly tell the engineer what to do or what's wrong. They have a very crude way of telling the engineer, oh, my auto-tune don't sound right, or I don't like the way the double sound, or things like that. They can talk about it from that perspective, but they are still lacking a lot of the skill set and the musical knowledge often to really construct a musical arrangement at a high level. So I think that also contributes to the state of music and the state of affairs we're hearing with music today, because a lot of the songs that we're hearing are highly influenced by just the input of the artist and the engineer in the end. We have to get back to production. We have to get back to working with artists. We can't be scared of being little homied and little broed by artists, but we do have to establish trust in order to get to that level, because they won't just trust you just because you have music.